All right, let's dive into something truly fascinating. We're going to explore an ancient, mysterious text that has had scholars scratching their heads for centuries. It's a book packed with stories of fallen angels, giants, and forbidden knowledge. A book that sits right on the very edge of Scripture. And as you'll see, its story is way more relevant than you might think. And right away, you run into this massive paradox. I mean, think about it. What if a book was so important, so significant, that the authors of the New Testament quoted it directly? But then, when the time came to put the final Bible together, it was left out. That's the huge puzzle at the heart of the Book of Enoch, and that's what we're going to unpack. Okay, so where is this direct reference? You might think it's buried somewhere obscure, but the connection is actually crystal clear. It's found in a really short but, wow, powerful letter in the New Testament. And look, this isn't just a casual mention or a vague nod. This is a direct, word-for-word quote. The book of Jude pulls this prophecy straight out of the first chapter of the book of Enoch. It creates this undeniable, explicit link between this ancient text and the Bible itself. There's no getting around it. So what was the deal with this book? Well, the early church fathers talked about it all the time. They quoted it. They even seemed to treat it as history. And yet, even with all that influence, it was ultimately left out of the biblical canon for most of Christianity. Maybe those stories about angelic rebellion were just a little too controversial. It only survived fully intact in the Ethiopian tradition. So that begs the question, right? How did a book this old, a book that was pretty much lost to the Western world for more than 1,000 years, how did it even survive? Well, its journey from the ancient world into our hands today is just incredible. Let's trace it. I mean, this book's journey is just remarkable. According to the text, it was written before the Great Flood. We know for a fact it was being quoted in the first century. But then, poof, it basically disappears for centuries, only to be reintroduced to the English-speaking world in the 1800s. But the real game changer, the moment everything shifted, was in 1947 with the discovery of the Dead Sea Scrolls. And why was that discovery so important? Because the fragments they found in those caves dated parts of the Book of Enoch to at least 300 BC. This was the smoking gun. It proved without a doubt that this was a genuine ancient Jewish text. It wasn't some kind of medieval forgery. This gave it serious historical weight. So, what's actually in this book that makes it so fascinating and frankly so controversial? Well, it kicks off with a story that sounds like it was ripped from a modern sci-fi epic, a rebellion in the heavens that spills over and completely changes everything on Earth. The book describes this massive apostasy, this huge falling away, but not by humans. No, this was a rebellion of angels. This is the very event Jude was talking about. It's a story of heavenly beings who literally abandoned their posts, and by doing so, changed the entire course of human history. Okay, so let's break this down. According to Enoch, this group of 200 angels, they're called the Watchers, they come down to Earth on Mount Hermon. They start taking human wives, and then they teach humanity all this forbidden knowledge, things we weren't supposed to know. And their children become the Nephilim, a race of violent giants that filled the whole Earth with chaos, which is what ultimately leads to the story of the Great Flood. And right at the center of all this corruption, you have this one figure named Azazel. The Book of Enoch points to him as a leader of the rebellion, the one who first started teaching all these forbidden secrets. In fact, it says that to him, all sin will be ascribed. He's basically the fall guy for the whole mess. But, the book isn't just about fallen angels and giants wreaking havoc. It's not all doom and gloom. Because right in the middle of this epic story of corruption, it also contains these remarkably specific prophecies about a coming Messiah, someone who would eventually come to set things right. So you see this number, 70. What on earth is this about? Well, the Book of Enoch has a prophecy that says the Messiah would show up a very specific number of generations after Enoch himself, and that number was 70. Now, this is where it gets really mind-bending. If you go to the Gospel of Luke in the New Testament, and you look at the genealogy there, and you count the generations from Enoch all the way down to Jesus Christ, what number do you get? Exactly 70. A prophecy made centuries before appearing to be fulfilled, to the letter. It's pretty wild. And it doesn't stop there. The book literally opens with the exact prophecy that Jude quoted, about the Messiah's second coming with thousands of his holy ones. It also talks about the idea of a virgin birth, and it even describes how this Messiah would fix the deep-seated corruption what the source material calls the genetic problem that was introduced by those rebellious watchers. Okay, so ancient history, right? Fallen angels, giants, prophecies. Why should any of this matter to us today? Why would a text that's over 2,000 years old be relevant now? Well, the argument is that the core themes of this book are popping up again in some really dramatic ways in our own time. Just think about this parallel for a second. It's pretty stark. The Book of Enoch describes these ancient, otherworldly beings engaging in what you could call genetic tampering with humanity. And then you look at today, and we have scientists literally experimenting with the human genome. The question is, are we sort of following in those same footsteps, exploring knowledge that Enoch warned was dangerous? Enoch's whole account of a great apostasy, this mass falling away from truth, is presented as a kind of lens for our world. The argument goes that we're living in a really similar time of global decay, a time where it feels like society itself is, well, coming apart at the seams. And so that's the question we're left with, isn't it? Could a book this ancient, this strange, filled with stories of fallen angels and giants, could it be more than just history? Could it actually provide a unique and maybe even an unsettling framework for making sense of our own turbulent world? That's definitely a question worth thinking about.